Hello there, world of tankers. Welcome back to another one of my videos. I am Blitz, and today I'm going to be talking about the K-91. Now, this tank has just hit the stores today for $35 US, and as always, I'm going to be talking about the tank, how to run it, where to run it, little tricks and secrets on the vehicle, and everything else in between. And as always, my opinion on the tank and whether or not you should put this in your garage. Now, the price of $35 isn't super expensive for a Tier 9 tank, to be honest, judging that the AMX prototype right now, I think is $45, did I say? $50. That's a pretty expensive tank. That's about average for a Tier 9, I'd have to say. The KPZ usually goes around 35, but I wasn't expecting this one to, just because of how unique it is, and especially since they just buffed it. I was actually very surprised that they are selling the tank for how cheap they are, judging that it received quite a large buff. And if you haven't seen my first video on the tank a couple weeks ago on the buff, what they did is they actually raised the average damage, which was 310 to 350. And because this tank is a clipper, that's dealing an extra 120 damage per clip. That's quite a bit more. You're going to be dealing a lot more damage every clip because of that. It brings you from dealing what a Batchat would do of 930 every clip to be dealing now 1,050. So I do like that you have the ability to do a lot more damage. And the really nice thing about this tank is its gun was already pretty good. It has very, very nice gun handling statistics. You can see here the shells go exactly where I want them to, one into that tank, and there goes the other. And now that you just get that extra bit of alpha, it really makes this tank so menacing because it has decent armor, it has actually a pretty good top speed. Overall, there's not many downsides to the tank now, and I really like that. I think it's a pretty balanced tank. And to be honest, I think it's a little bit above balanced, but the average player isn't going to be doing spectacular in it just because of how funky it really is to play. And ooh, that high explosive is so good to run now with that extra damage. Ram that WT there, save my extra shot. And you can see that gun is really accurate. And the nice thing about it is your standard penetration is 248, which is pretty good for a Tier 9 tank. And I make sure I run calibrated on it, so it brings your average pen up to 260. And pretty much for any autoloader, I really highly suggest you do put on calibrated, especially for a tank like this, because not only does your standard pen go from 248 to 260, it brings your heat pen, which is normally sitting at around 310 to 341. That is a very, very large difference. That's the difference of being able to penetrate a E100's turret to not being able to penetrate, or the mouse's cheeks to not being able to penetrate. You definitely want to run your heat with calibrated. It's just one of the most important things in the game. I can't urge it enough. Another thing about the gun that's really spectacular is the shell velocity. It's actually 1,535. That is almost the same shell velocity as a T-62A. That is really, really impressive about the tank. Now, unfortunately, the heat shells only have a shell velocity of 900, but it is heat, so that is to be expected. Now, the magazine reload is also pretty good, 16.3 seconds. That's actually really good for how much damage it can output, and because of that, the tank deals 2,700 damage per minute. And as I said, the dispersion's pretty good at 2.326. That's very good for the average heavy. And the aiming time also isn't that bad at 2.08. So overall, the tank is really, really good on the gun. Now, when thinking of the armor profile of this tank, you'd probably expect it just to be like any other Russian heavy, to have very, very thick frontal armor. However, it actually really doesn't. It's one of the weakest heavy tanks frontally that I can really think of in the game. Tier for tier-wise, should I say, because the lower plate on this tank is only 150 millimeters thick. You're not going to bounce anything in your lower plate, and it's a pretty easy target to hit. It is very, very large. And the upper plate as well, just above the lower plate, is still only about 225 millimeters thick, which means that if you're running any IS tank, any IS-5, IS-6, or you're running any Tier 9, pretty much any Tier 9, you're going to penetrate this tank frontally. It's just not going to bounce shots. However, it does have very good side armor. You're actually able to side scrape very, very efficiently in it. That's one thing I do find very cool about the vehicle, is the frontal armor is so awful, but yet the side armor on it is very, very troll. There's actually, if you can see on the armor inspector, there's this front plate that actually acts as an impenetrable spot behind the track. And because of that, it's actually almost impossible to penetrate this tank through the front track wheel when it is side scraping, which is really, really good for the vehicle. And that's one thing that I was very surprised to find on Armor Inspector, I think last year when I checked out the tank. So yeah, it does have some very, very funky armor, and it really makes you bounce some really ridiculous shots sometimes. And not to mention, just like most Russian tanks, the turret is very well armored. Most of the spots on it are around 300 millimeters thick, except for some of the little weak spots where it curves in a little. It's about 220 thick. However, the tank's armor isn't as bad as you'd really think it is because it is Russian, and most Russian tanks in the game are very, very low down. You can see I'm pretty much the same height as this IS-6, and because of that, you can very, very easily hide your lower plate and your upper plate in the hills. You can duck behind alleyways. You can really get your armor to perform pretty well if you can get into a good position where you do manage to hide your, your lower plate. And as I said, the side is pretty good. The rear armor is actually pretty good as well. It's almost impossible to pen high explosive on this vehicle because it is quite funky. So overall, I do really like the tank. That is one really big benefit for me over it. But you can see here, I can just easily penetrate it. But you can see that when I was aiming at him, there was that spot on the track that you just couldn't penetrate behind. And that is one really troll thing. So if you're going to take out this vehicle, do not shoot it in the track wheel. It will not penetrate. It's very troll, but it's something I found out the hard way when I was running my 183 once. I shot right at its track wheel. I was like, what? Bounced right off. I was like, oh my god. So that is one thing you definitely want to know about this tank if you want to take it out. Now you can see this game we did 4,100 damage. 67,000 credits. Unfortunately, we did die, but we did carry for the team. All of our shots penned, all hit. It's very, very good gun, as I said. I actually like the look of the vehicle. I think it's just such a unique tank. It looks actually pretty good with camouflage on, too. But overall, I actually really like the K-91. And since the buff, it's even better. I liked it before, but now because of this buff, it really is a cool vehicle. It's like you combine 57 Heavy with an AMX. It's got decent armor. It's got very, very good Russian turret, which is really good. That is the main selling point for me on the vehicle. It's just that the turret is so good and the side armor is so good you're able to bounce the shots. Even though that front is so bad, if you're a smart enough player, all you need to do is side scrape the tank and you're going to do fine. And my final verdict on the tank, whether or not you should put it in your garage, yeah, I actually really like it. For $30, that's really not that bad of a deal. The K-91 is a really good tank. It earns very good credits. There's no way they're ever going to nerf this thing, in my opinion. It just doesn't get enough tension. Nobody really wants to buy it. That's why they're probably selling it for cheaper, in my opinion. But I enjoy it. I think it's excellent. My Blitz star stats in it today were around 3,300 average damage for the 20 games I played in it, which is about the same as my tier 10s. So you can see the gun on this tank is really, really good. And that's what makes it just so good. It's pretty much a mix of everything. So yeah, I like it. I would suggest to pick it up if you have the money. However, as I always say, Blitz Fair is coming out, and this tank will probably come back out in the Blitz Fair. So, if you're just wanting to know, should I buy this tank because I've got extra money lying around, I'd just save your money for the Blitz Fair. But if you're trying to get a fun Tier 9 vehicle or just a higher tier vehicle to play around with that's unique, yeah, I like it. I think it's good. I would say to pick it up. But other than that, guys, I hope you did enjoy this video. As always, make sure to subscribe. Make sure this content keeps on coming out. Hit me up on Patreon if you want to support me at all. Links in the description. Other than that, I'll see you in the next one. Thanks for watching.